Um, yeah, I mean, we spent like we wanted because we knew that it was like a found footage kind of a movie, and it was written mainly of like a relationship kind of delved into the different kind of relationships. This guy with his partner, him and his wife, and him formulating one with his girlfriend and wife to be. We wanted it to be as real as possible, like what it's really like to be like a police officer and how they spend time. And so we did so many ride-alongs. At first it was like, wow, this is exciting. Then I was like, okay, enough of this. And then it actually got to be really interesting because you got to be in the head of the police officer and think the way they think. And it's scary, like for an actor to be like finally like, wow, I feel like a cop, and then remind yourself you're like, oh, you're an actor. So it took a little bit of time to shake it off, but it was an eye opener, to see people that actually care about the neighborhood, care about the culture, and then actually want to protect those people that like actually want to do good in their lives, and then have total and full confront to be able to fight those criminals, or like make sure that they're not hurting the honest business owner, and to try to make their neighborhood that they're assigned to like a better place. It's kind of scary, like doing the ride-alongs and seeing these guys, like when somebody pulls a gun, like that's a stolen gun with the serial number kind of scratched off. It's kind of scary, and it's not always a typical person that has that you think you're like, oh, this guy's dirty. That's what's so surprising, We did I did police training with my wife. It was interesting because it's like it's how do you like I guess your relationship changes also, like depending on the your whatever you do in life, like sometimes you're gone a lot, like, and with a cop, you got to make sure that your wife is okay, and that you're offer the same kind of support, but at the same time you try to throw away everything that happened during the day. And I asked those guys a lot of questions, about how it is, and try to really get into the psyche. I mean, because I think this is what this movie's mainly about. There is like action sequences, and some people would say it's like an action movie, but for me it was like a kind of like the movies that I love, like You Can Count on Me, what it really focuses on the relationships. And I asked, then we did weapons training, we did sparring, and it really gets you in the mindset when you punch somebody in the face and they're punching you back.
I mean, for me, a lot of things kind of hit close to home when, I don't, without giving so much away, but some things hit kind of close to home, and just having to like it's kind of scary when you live a life that you don't know when your partner's going to actually come back home or not, and I think that's really hard for a cop's wife. It's kind of, these men put themselves on the line all the time, just to protect our city and protect, our fellow, citizens and stuff. And I think that's probably one of the hardest parts. And also after watching the movie, you're reading it like that, but the visuals this movie has, I mean, after I saw it, I was emotional too. It's funny, like I read the script a couple times, and I knew the movies. I was there for some shootings, and it really, something struck inside of me when I saw some of the scenes that I wasn't a part of, but that they went through, and that was kind of shocking. And the fact of knowing that half these stories are like pretty much true. They come from, real cops, and these are real true stories. So it's kind of freaky things that really go on in a normally looking neighborhood, and what goes on behind doors is kind of crazy. And my vision has kind of changed towards cops just because of what they do on a daily basis,
I think it's just dudes being dudes. Seriously, I think, I don't think they think about it that much. I'm like, if you think about it, you're constantly like your head on a swivel, you're looking for danger, but at the same time, you're with somebody, and sometimes it can be boring, you know what I mean? And there's like, and you kind of want it to be boring, in all honesty. You kind of want it to be nice and quiet in the streets, and you want it to know that your presence is being, that people are aware of your presence. But, what are you going to do? They work for like 12 hours or something. They work for a long time. So when when we're doing movies, we like joke around all the time. And that's the one thing that me and Jake were surprised at as well. Like the real cops actually joke around a lot. you know. So we're like, yeah, we should definitely do it in this movie, you know. Like, you know, when I initially read it, I was like, I didn't see that much humor, but it was like, if you kind of attack it like two brothers going at it, I think there'd be a lot of humor, and there'd be a lot of room for humor. And also just looking at the movie and as a whole, it would be kind of cool to have like action, funny, without it being like an action comedy, but like humor, I guess you could say, and then touching, and then, you know, some good family time, and just make it a well-rounded picture. I mean, we didn't ad-lib very much. I'm like, usually we'd have like, you know, like say we had 8 takes, one of them, he says, okay, do whatever you want. And 9 times out of 10, the writing was so good that you didn't have to do it. But we wanted to make it, because of the found footage, we wanted to make it as real as possible and make it look like improv, which is harder than it looks, you know what I mean? Like, it seems really easy, but that's when you really gotta, this is like actory, but like when you have to really understand like the subtleties of like your motivation and objective that you want in the scenes, and like why is this scene in the movie, and it's a lot of work. And sometimes we rehearsed something like 100 times. There was one scene that we literally rehearsed 100 times because we just couldn't get it, and finally we're like, oh, I found something, oh, we found something, boom, and then it was ready to be shot.
I think it's interesting. You have a lot, you can play a lot, you know, and it's his vision, it's his baby, which makes it, and he had all that much more control over it. I think it's really interesting when you have that in a job, just because it allows you, it allows you to trust him kind of completely with where he's going, what he wants, because it's that one person whole. Usually it gets lost in translation when you have one guy writing it, the other guy trying to interpret it, and they have 2 different ideas, but when it's the same kind of guy, I mean, that's what I think. I feel like, you know, it allows you to trust the director a little bit more because it's his vision and he's the one that's kind of in charge of everything.
Do you think he was less flexible or more flexible?
Oh, I think David Ayer is more, I think he's a flexible director, just the fact he's an actor's director, and by that meaning, you know, he gives you a lot of freedom. Like Michael said, you know, you do your takes and you do your stuff, but then he'll give you freedom to kind of make it your own. You know, improv is basically all of it's just kind of out there, you know, just kind of throw things out. Like Will Ferrell does a lot, you know, and Jim Carrey, that's like a lot more where they just go and go and go. This was more, you know, watching the guys doing it, and you know, that my fun little sex scene, you know, that's mostly all written, you know, but then he'll tell you like, oh, you know, you add you add like little things here and there, and you do certain stuff, like you add certain words, or, you know, maybe if it's written one way, you just kind of change the past tense, or you kind of change something to make it yours. That's the kind of freedom, you know, you kind of have. And I don't know if you want to add something.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, he wrote the scenes, you know what I mean, like, expertly, and he's a great writer. I think he really is. When I always chase the writing first, you know, like, when I first read Crash, I'm like, oh, please, I want to do this movie, you know, and you know, different stories like that. And this was one where I'm like, oh, I really want to do this movie. And what's interesting with him is that he literally painted the entire scenario. His writing is so strong that when you read it, you're like, oh, I know exactly what you're looking at. Yeah, so when like we talk about the scenes, and a lot of times he would plug in his ideas about it, and those are usually the things that we try to improvise. And he had no pressure, because it's like, if it wasn't good, he can always cut it. But what's interesting is I'm like,
or rewrite it.
And then sometimes he would just write scenes right then and there for us to do. And I remember a couple times I was like, I don't know, David. I'm like, I don't know if I'm not pulling that line off. And he's like, all right. And I'm like, usually I'd be like, can I change it? He's like, yeah, no, man. Yeah, can you do me a favor and say it? And if it sucks, I'll cut it out. Like, that's the kind of guy he is.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay. And then there's a lot of times where I'm like, it's always interesting when a line is very hard to do. Those are the ones that I work at the most, because that's usually what reveals the character to you. And like, you know, like even a line is like, look at this, it's got more bling than an old lady's wedding ring. You know, that is like something that I wouldn't say, but I'm like, wow, he says it though. And so I really worked out what Savala would say, and there's like a list of hard lines that I also think give texture to the performance, you know, because it's not like I say that in every movie. So I'm like, I kept trying to use it in life until it was, you know, like the old lady, you know what I mean? Oh, that's my old ladies, man. Like, you know, that's a hard one to pull off, especially if you're not comfortable with it. And then so you have to do it and do it and do it and do it in life. Where I remember I was like, hey, so how's your old lady? And then my friends would be like, That's my what, dude? That's your old lady, dude. Yeah, my girlfriend. It's fun.
I'm still really I still cringe at the thought of that. You know what? Like
Your dad's gonna see that.
I know my dad's gonna see that. I'm gonna be like, I don't know, Bobby. You know, like it was written. It was written. No, I mean, you know what? Now that I think about it, man, like I don't remember it being all that crazy. You know, like when I read it, I just remember doing stuff, and David Ayer pulled me aside, and he's like, you know, I want you to make Michael feel very uncomfortable. You know, I want him to be like literally want to reach over and be like, shut up, you know? He's like, so I'm just gonna let it roll. I'm just gonna keep going until it goes. So there are some parts, you know, where I ran it by him about saying certain things. He got embarrassed. Like he's very shy with that kind of stuff too. Like he didn't want to hear it. He even had like a flushed face after. He's like, okay, that's enough. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Cupham and Suckham after was like, all right, cut after that one. But we surveyed around. I mean, and Kendrick actually told me one of the ones to say, and you know, you had some of the grips like, oh, have you heard of this one? And like say certain things. I'm like, no, like
Wikipedia.
Yeah, you're like YouTubing Urban Dictionary, like what is this and what's that, and it's kind of funny, but yeah, it's
Those things are real.
oh yeah, like Texas Twister and I can't remember the other one, but there's
That's cool. You know.
yeah.
Rusty trombone.
But see, like there's just so much of stuff that's just like, so I'm really embarrassed about that. I mean, that's gonna be something that's like shit. That's gonna be with me forever. You know, and I remember watching it, and my little sister, she's 15 years old. I took her to go see one of the screenings, and then I was kind of like, oh my god, I forgot about that. She's like looking at me weird. I'm like, dude, it's just scripted.
Leslie Nielsen. There's nothing to see here. There's fireworks. Yeah.
It's embarrassing. It is. And then these guys, I mean, it's just opening up all kinds of doors for people to be like, hey, you know, like.
Oh yeah, you're gonna be that.
Yeah, I want to be that girl now. That like.
Have you heard of the blah 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 blah?
Yeah. Not cool. Or maybe real cool. Who knows?
I don't know, but I think that's something that we talked about. You know, that in the first draft, you know, both of them, you know, suffer that whatever. It'd probably be better not to give away the ending. You know what I mean? He's like, how was ET? He goes home. No, what do you mean? Really, no, she dies. She dies. Euthanasia. You know. Yeah, but there was like a bunch of different endings that you know, she was actually at it, you know, and it was one where I suffered the casualty, like he suffered the casualty, and then we both suffered the casualty.
It was hard.
And it was a tough day for you. I mean, she's probably better now.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I feel like he did that just kind of to have his options. I think also to keep that kind of control over it. I don't think anybody knew what it was. Like, I didn't know what it was until, I don't think you knew either, right? Until you kind of saw,
no idea.
You know, that, I think that's his part of his whole thing. But I feel like he did that just to kind of, I feel like he kept, I can't say anything without even giving it kind of away, but, you know, he has his methods of his own madness, and I think it's kind of evident why that happens, and I think one of the greatest things about this movie is, you can't expect anything, because then if you expect it, you're wrong. You know, it's kind of one of those, it's not a classic, you know, studio-driven where, like, you don't have the freedom to do this, like, everybody has to be a certain way, or the movie needs to be a certain way, you need to have a certain amount of things in it. This was kind of shot like indie verse, you know, and it kind of has its own ending, so I think it's great, the ending, because you don't expect it, you don't see it coming, and it's kind of awesome. So that's probably one of the reasons why everybody should tune in and watch, because you don't really know, you can't expect anything out of it.